Good night, Belizeans at home and abroad. This is the Belizean Affairs Show number 448. 448. My name is Leonard Brackett. I'm your host of the Belizean Affairs program, and I'll be your chairman for tonight's particular uh, subject matter. That is, that we'll be dealing with some constitutional issues that relates to the Governor General as well as others. And I'd like to take the opportunity to say thanks to you who are going to be watching us tonight while we're live, and to those who will be listening to us at your convenience, maybe after when you get home from work or tomorrow or some other point of convenience. Thanks for your time, spirit, and listening to what we have to offer. Uh, I'll go ahead and, as we normally do on our program, I'll offer a short word of prayer, after which I'll do a short reading and I'll launch into the rest of the program thereafter. So for right now, I'll just go ahead and bow my head if you allow me. Divine loving Father, once again we come before thy presence, asking that thou would continue to have mercy upon us. Please continue to bless our family members, friends, and loved ones wherever they are, as if they were each mentioned by name and number. The nurse our hearts, our desires, and our most secret thoughts. Please let the words of our mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable before thy divine presence, we pray. We pray that thou must bless our country of Belize, its people and leadership, that thou would bless this country, its people and leadership as well, and that thou would bless the rest of humanity, especially those people who are in war zones, who are being hurt sometimes for no justifiable reason, those who are losing their lives, and those who have need of food and clothes and shelter. Please provide for them as well. We ask these mercies in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks. I'll just go ahead and do a short scripture reading. I'll see where I'm going to take my reading from tonight. Uh, okay. I'll take my reading from St. John chapter 17. I'll start at verse 1. These words spake Jesus, and lifted up his eyes to heaven, and said, Father, the hour is come. Glorify thy Son, that thy Son also may glorify thee, as thou hast given him power over all flesh, that he should give eternal life to as many as thou hast given him. And verse 3 goes on to say, And this is life eternal, that they might know thee, that they might know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom thou hast sent. And that's the end of our reading for tonight. Thank you very much for entertaining us and participating in that part of our program protocol. And I'll just get straight into the program because tonight our program is normally 90 minutes. And I started a few minutes late, but I would still like to cover as much of the material as possible. So uh, I will read an article that I wrote and posted on August 6th of 2022 to begin our program tonight. And the title of that article was The Belize Governor General's Purview, or in other words, what are the powers and authority that the Governor General of Belize is vested with by the head of state, on whose behalf she serves and at whose pleasure she serves as well. The Governor General does not report to the Prime Minister, she reports to the head of state. She serves at the pleasure of the head of state. And on behalf of the head of state, She does not perform as some people are tended to believe or would like to hope might be the case. In other words, as a rubber stamp. Yes, she does sign off on matters of state that requires ascension to make them legal or give them constitutional merits or powers, because the head of state, as we have read before and we will probably read tonight again, of Belize, is the person in whose hand the executive powers reside. And those powers may be exercised by the Governor General, who can delegate some of those powers to subordinate officers, because the Governor General in Belize is the person that represents the head of state and who then holds on to the powers of the executive of Belize. And after a general election is held, normally the winner or the person who has the majority of the members of the House of Representatives would go to the Governor General for the Governor General to swear them in and assent to their vested right as per the people's desire to exercise some of those powers that the Governor General is vested with. And then, as the Constitution says, she then may allow subordinate officers of her to function as a prime minister in one case, as a deputy prime minister in another case, and as ministers of other various portfolios, government department, or ministries. So right there you can see that she's not just a rubber stamp. She's granting authority and powers to those who will exercise those powers and may exercise those powers, who are subordinate officers of hers on behalf of the people of Belize. She's also the guardian of the Constitution of Belize, representing the head of state. Now, let me go ahead and read this article that I wrote, because I was doing a little commentary just now for contextualization. Because a lot of people, like I said, have this impression, and a lot of other people are spreading or propagating this idea that the country doesn't need a governor general, and or that the governor general serves no purpose other than just being a rubber stamp, to rubber stamp whatever the prime minister wants, or cabinet wants, or the legislator wants, or anybody else wants. While at the same time they fail to understand and recognize that if the governor general so choose to not assent to whatever is it that they want, for whatever reason that they want it, and for whatever reasons that she chooses not to assent to it, it is her prerogative, and no law or no court in the country can query into whether or not she judiciously or exercised her executive powers adequately. Because when she exercises those powers, it doesn't necessarily have to be at the request or the advice of the prime minister or the opposition or any other minister or any other person who are subordinate officers of hers in the governance of Belize. She gives power to them, they don't give power to her. They are accountable to her for whatever request she makes of them in regards to the governance of Belize. A lot of our people are not being taught these critical, necessary facts and constitutionally enshrined issues of state. And for that reason, they are left to be bamboozled by these charlatans that come by every once in a while and pretend that they can just dismiss the Constitution because, as far as they're concerned, they don't trust, they don't believe in it, they have no fidelity to it, and they would just as well pretend it doesn't exist. Uh, I'll go on and do the reading. As I said, the article was first, well, not first, but the last time I think I recall publishing this article was August 6th of 2022. And it becomes necessary for me to go back to this publication as a matter of historical reference because I had the privilege yesterday to listen to another program like this, like ours, by a different name, where some of the presenters or the individuals on the program, they were having a hard time grasping, apparently, the essence of what I'm going to present tonight and the essence of which this article that I had written had addressed. And I'm not going to call the name of the program, nor am I going to call the names of the individuals who were on that particular program. But I had the belief that with the amount of knowledge base that exists on that program in terms of the amount of years of experience and knowledge among all those various individuals who were participating on that program, there should have been enough knowledge base there for them to not have had a difficulty understanding this issue. Let me get a little deeper into it. The following commentary was made by Leonard, Brackett, myself, to Mr. Hillman Haylock in response to his, Mr. Haylock, comment on my Facebook post about Belize PM, that is to say, the Belize Prime Minister. As I said earlier, I titled the article, "The Belize Governor General's Purview." And I went on to say, the Belize Governor General is in a pickle of a situation, as she, because the current Governor General is a she, is Ms. Salam, Her Excellency Ms. Salam. I said the Belize Governor General is in a pickle of a situation, as she was recommended by Honorable PM Mr. John Briceño for that position to be not to be to become the Governor General of the country. They picked her and recommended her because the previous Governor General was informed and would be leaving office, and we needed a new Governor General. So the people that win the election or has the power conceded to them for governing the country had made a recommendation in regards to how to get this new Governor General appointed, or who would be the recommended person. And it became then Ms. Salan. But because the Prime Minister was the person that recommended her for that post to the head of state, and the head of state went ahead and acceded to that request, somehow I continue on here. I open the bracket and I continue on in the bracket to stipulate by saying, and they expect her to be in their gratitude to be pliable, facilitating or acquiescing to their agendas. That is that she was recommended to become the next Governor General, and they were hoping that because they made that recommendation, that she will be ingratiated with them, and whatever is it that they want to have done, she would facilitate them without any regards to whether that facilitation is constitutional, legal, lawful, ethical, or moral. The expectation was there that she would just act like a rubber stamp, like what some of these funny-minded people who don't know their constitution, don't take the time to read it, and just want to pretend that they're just saying something funny or making a joke out of serious critical matters, right? Or matters of state. So I went on in another paragraph to say, however, the Governor General is accountable to and serves at the pleasure of the Belize head of state, that is to say, Her Majesty when she was alive, and because of her death or demise, now you'll say His Majesty of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth of Great Britain. And the current Governor General could not be found in contravention of Belize's head of state's interests. That is to say, she serves at his pleasure, and his pleasure is to have her fulfill certain obligation on his behalf in his stead or in his place, because she is then the local representation of the foreign head of state, basically. The Governor General, I went on to say, the Governor General's office budget, for example, is the purview of the Belize government. That is to say, she doesn't currently have an adequate law or constitutionalist in house as part of her team to advise or forestall or derogate or reject proposed unconstitutional bills or acts or deny assent thereof, as Belize is being taken into major constitutional altering crisis mode. For all intents and purposes, what I indicated or attempted to indicate there is that, as is the case currently, the Governor General does not have a staff of lawyers in her office that should be able to look at whatever documents come from the legislator or from the Prime Minister or from wherever to give her legal advice other than the advice that could be given to her by the Attorney General, who is also a member of cabinet. So then, for all intents and purposes, what happens is that if cabinet agrees on something or have a majority acquiescing to something, then the Attorney General is dispatched with haste to take those matters to the attention of the Governor General, provide whatever input the Attorney General would like to provide to the Governor General, so that the Governor General can feel satisfied that she's getting some legal advice, even though that legal advice might be favorable to cabinet rather than favorable to the Governor General's disposition of those matters. Such as to say, the legal advice that the Governor General then would be getting is based on cabinet's desire or wishes, rather than getting a independent advice from her own legal staff, which they do not provide for her, because the budget for the Governor General comes through the national budget of Belize, and there's not enough appropriation there for her to get her own legal advice. So she is in a pickle, as in the case where I'm going to say right now, as regards to the PCC Act that was voted on in the Assembly, taken to the Governor General for her to sign, and apparently she signed off on it and gave it some credence, having assented to it, to say that she is willing to conspire against her boss. who is the head of state, on behalf of the cabinet, the prime minister, cabinet, and the rest of other people, that's working contrary to the governor general. That is to say, the governor general went ahead and signed off on something that authorized the creation of a commission to commit sedition against the head of state. The governor general should never have been put in such a position, and or she should never be, be found in such a position if she was adequately, legally, lawfully, and constitutionally appropriately advised. Because that's a travesty. Okay? The Attorney General should not provide no legal advice or recommendation to the Governor General, for which the Governor General is then being hoodwinked in order for his cabinet colleagues and himself being able to get their way with the Governor General. Because she's not a lawyer, and like I said earlier, she doesn't have any other legal support that is provided to her other than the very Governor General, the Attorney General himself. So if something is wrong with a proposed law or a proposed recommendation, and she is not any more the wiser of those realities or those facts, and she signs off on it like as stipulated specifically in the case of this PCC Act that she signed off on, then for all intents and purposes, she is not serving at the pleasure and in good faith and goodwill towards her boss, who puts her in that position to serve his interests and to work on his behalf in his absence. I hope people understand what I'm trying to say. I hope I'm not saying it in such a way that people are not grasping, or maybe I need to say it in a different way, or maybe the words that I'm using, or the tone that I'm using, or whatever is it. I hope I'm not batching up the presentation, rather than actually make a presentation that people can be informed on and be a little bit more lucid on. Because like I said a little earlier, it's matters of state, critical matters of state. I will proceed. Uh, there's a category under this Facebook post that says most relevant. And there, one of my dear esteemed blood brother, Vanguard of Belize, Mr. Hillman Halep, made a comment. He said, with that being said, as I had intimated above in the article, he went on to say, it seems like we are between the devil and the deep blue sea. I replied to his comment by saying, Mr. Hillman Halep, who is now deceased, by the way, very much so, sir, I said. And our Belizean people are asleep with eyes wide open. Some of them being indifferent and others just being cavalier to our impending plight. Another very good colleague of mine, who is also deceased, and I would say the Venerable Mr. Glenn Tillett, went on to make his own posting in rebuttal to what or in retort or reply to what I had written. He went on to say, amazing, Leonard Brackett, comma, that you can read minds and not just infer. Now, this gentleman and myself used to have some royal battles in terms of, you know, issues of our country, right? We always have, sometimes major drawn out battles, philosophical battles and, historical, all kind of stuff, So the gentleman he's well recommended, and he holds his own. He's capable of holding his own. Okay, so he has no hesitance to address my commentary in that way, because he was deep and he was very perceptive, as well as very well read and very knowledgeable. And like I said, we had some major royal battles, but I'm not getting into that as a specific. I'm just saying that in passing. The gentleman is dead and gone. He's not here now to account for himself. So I can't be disingenuous and or petty in any way to say, well, ascribe to him any negativity that he cannot defend on his own. I have to be measured. So therefore, I'll just read what he said again, right? Just for for further clarity or further explanation. My buddy, Mr. Glenn Tillett, went on to say again, like I earlier read. I'm going to read it again. It's very short. Amazing, Leonard Brackett, that you can read minds and not just infer. No, the average person, would tend to believe that maybe he's repeating himself in that short sentence or statement, because he's talking about reading minds while at the same time inferring. Now, for you to be able to make inference to something, as a minimum, you as a person must have some knowledge or awareness as to what it is that you're inferring to, at, and or about. I hope I'm correct. So when I acquired that ability to anticipate something based on what I read before, and or whether it's something that I surmised, and or whether it was something that um, you know, however I came about the knowledge or the ability to be able to speak truth to power or speak those words, you know, they came from my base of knowledge, my awareness. But like I said, he was a stickler for words. He was, he's a former teacher himself, and so no. Uh, but anyway, let me proceed further. I don't want to bear on this, because that was the end. I proceeded to answer my good brother, okay, and I said to him in this way, Mr. Glenn Tillett, are you unaware of the facts behind my above comments, even as publicly available information? Was Honorable PM Mr. John Briceño correct by intimating that Belize lacks talent? Now, I was being a bit facetious then with him, right? Because, like I said, that's the way we carried with each other. Not out of any disrespect personally, but, we were just, we were a bit heady then. Let me say it like that. We were heady, and we were always challenging each other to rise to a higher level in regards to whatever is it that we were discussing at any point, right? We always try to bring out more than what was brought out or given out at any instant by each and every one of us. We always thought that there was a little bit more being held back that we would like to have come out. So we prompt each other, we instigated each other, and that's how we carried. And I was a bit the better for having met the gentleman and, bantering with the gentleman, because he did achieve that objective. That is to say, pull out a little bit more than me than normally what I would have been giving out, and I did the same thing in return to him in terms of what he would have been putting out. I was always ready to prompt him or challenge him or get him to come back with something a bit more solid. And that's part of life. That's how human beings communicate in as positive a manner as necessary or possible, and still be able to uh, like force each other to learn more or to go an extra distance. And like I said, I was a better person for having met the gentleman and having interacted with the gentleman over the years that we did. And I guess I'd hope that I maybe had done the same in return too, right? Because at the end of the day, we were always dealing with matters of state and of the country, you know. And we took, in other words, we weren't like trying to be personal to each other and or with each other in that regards. It was always about what serves the best interests of the country. And so we had some royal battles. I call them royal battles, but they were like just basic interaction and trying to get each other to rise to the occasion. Basically, if I must say it in that's a more benign way of saying what I was trying to convey. Nevertheless, Mr. Glenn Tillett, my buddy, replied to me by saying, by retorting back against what I had stipulated to him. He said, "How does that in any way provide any basis for your assertions that the process of constitutional reform is seditious?" Now, he's trying to stay focused on the fact that the government had back then, and still as of today date, been attempting to eviscerate major parts of the Constitution and, if possible, the whole thing, and to come up with something that was new and more pliable to their agenda. In other words, they had no fidelity to our present Constitution and had been operating as if they had no regards for it and as if it didn't exist. Nevertheless, he stayed focused on my part of the comment that related to the um, the seditious activity. Now he has died and he's not around now that he would have been able to see with hindsight what these gentlemen put out there as their, well, it's not their final product, but what the commission itself put out as its final product, which is exactly 100% of what I was saying back then. But if you recall, in his first statement to me, he says, "It's amazing that I, Leonard Brackett, can read minds and not just infer." I wasn't just inferring to something. It was probably an inference to those who didn't have the background that I had and the archives that I have and the history that I had 60 odd years, with these knucklehead people that I'm still dealing with, as a matter of fact. So there is a history. Nevertheless, I wish my brother would have been around today, because then I would have been chatting him by saying, "Did you read the recommendations made by the 100 recommendation made by the PCC, the People's Constitution Committee, which they had to submit to the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister now has that somewhere in his office, gathering dust until he's ready to bring it to the legislature, or until he's ready to put it out there in public for the public to have their comment and to acquiesce, agree or disagree with those proposals before he go and try to turn them into law. Because that's how it's supposed to be done. But apparently the Prime Minister was of the impression that he could go ahead and turn it into law, and then once it's in law, then he don't have to bother about educating nobody about it, because I recall him making a statement once that we will know what something is when we see it. Now, I don't want to put no words in the man's mouth, so that's the way I say it, because that's for all intents and purposes what he implied and intended for us to understand. So my good friend went on to say, how does that, what I replied to him, in any way provide any basis for your assertion, my assertion he's referring to, that the process of constitutional reform is seditious? I would have liked for him to be able to read now the real document that they have put out, and he would not have a need then to ask me that particular question, because he would see for himself that what I presciently had stipulated turned out to be the facts that are now known to any and everyone that spends the time to look at the document, read it for themselves, analyze it for themselves, and have their own conclusion. Because they could not come up with any other conclusion other than that these guys are intending to commit sedition, which is what I brought up earlier when I said that they hoodwinked the Governor General into her committing an act of facilitating sedition. And now their recommendation is to have her vanish or vanquish from her position as Governor General, because they want the Prime Minister now to assume that powers, all the powers that are vested in the Governor General, for it to be vested in the Prime Minister. And they want the Prime Minister to actually become the head of state, not just um, assume the powers of Governor General, but to assume the powers of the head of state as well, while still being called a Prime Minister, which is kind of ludicrous, because that means that they don't even understand. They know what they probably want to achieve, but they don't know the mechanism and the process by which to go from where we are to where they really want to go. Because if the Prime Minister assumes those powers of the head of state, then for all intents and purposes, he is the head of state, or would become the head of state. And that title as Prime Minister would then have to change, or would need to be changed, legitimately so, to be the President of the future Republic of Belize. Hello? So these guys are still not being able to clean up their let me let me stay with the reading, trying to finish reading Mr. Tillett's commentary, right? Because I have a few others along the same vein of the conversation we were having. He went on to, my good friend went on to say, an opinion by anyone of Belizean uh, possessions of, or lack thereof of talent is simply an opinion and nothing else. Now he's addressing back the point that the Prime Minister had indicated, for which he got flagged substantively by a lot of people, by the way. The Prime Minister had went on to indicate that we don't have like too much talent in Belize. Okay? And some people flagged them for it, and I was one of those people who flagged them for it. But my good friend here, within the context of this particular conversation, you know, because I dared to bring up back what the Prime Minister had said, that he's implying then that that is the only focus of the whole of what I had written above. Or maybe he just wanted to take me to task for that one particular uh, comment. But my comment about sedition did not relate to the comment that he's now addressing. My comment about sedition is about their onerous and unconstitutional approach to trying to eviscerate and bastardize the Constitution. So you can't take one thing and conflate it and interject and divert into something else unless you have really dealt with and disposed of the original point of order or point of contention. Otherwise, you're going to leave something out there without being resolved or properly cleared up, only to start on another point that also is left out there like a sore thumb. Or you're expanding the conversation. Nothing wrong with that either, right? So I went on to say to my good friend, I won't even call his name right now because it doesn't make sense for me to be calling the man name after he's dead and gone, right? So I'll just, out of basic decency, try to just find a way to get the story or the points across without having to be doing the name calling part. So my friend went on to say, "Sir, please be gracious enough." No. I went on to say to my friend, whose name I didn't, like I said, I wasn't going to continue calling or naming because that would be kind of gratuitous and uh, unseemly. In my way of thinking, I would think that it would come off or may appear to be unseemly, like I said, right? So let me leave it at that. So I replied to my friend by saying, "Sir, please be gracious enough to read my commentary slash comments with your glasses on. You are believed to have a fabulous mind and great comprehension, sir. God bless always." And that was the end of my comment in that regards to. Uh, like I said, we used to have a lot of these different discussions, right? But uh, I missed the gentleman because he was, you know, he used to give me a lot of food for thought, you know. And it's nice to have people like that in your life that you can benefit from positively. And so I'll just say, God rest his soul. May God take his soul into safekeeping until resurrection day to rise with the departed faithful. But in the interest of the continuity of my program and the point that I was trying to bring across as regards to the Governor General, uh, I want to go ahead and read from the Constitution of Belize. Is it yeah, I'll read from the Constitution of Belize, Part 4, under which the main title is the executive. And I'll read Section 36 of the Constitution, subsection 1, which reads as follows: The executive authority of Belize is vested in His Majesty or Her Majesty. We now know currently we have a he as the head of state, so it's His Majesty. Section 2 goes on to read as follows. Not section 2, subsection 2, I'm sorry, goes on to read as follows: Subject to the provisions of this Constitution, which is the Constitution of Belize, the executive authority of Belize may be exercised. Remember, I pointed this out earlier in my regular commentary. I'm now reading the version words commentary that I made from the Constitution itself as is written in the Constitution. It says, subject to the provisions of this Constitution, the executive authority of Belize may be exercised on behalf of His Majesty by the Governor General, either directly or through officers subordinate to him or her. And those subordinate officers of the Governor General would be in the line of the succession for the exercise of executive authority or powers: the Prime Minister, for example, any other minister of department or ministry, for example, any CEO, and or any permanent secretary or any members of commissions and or blah blah blah. Right down the line, all individuals who are involved in the day-to-day operations or governance of Belize as a country. That is to say, all the civil service, as well as even contract officers or individuals. Okay? Subject to the provisions of this constitution, the executive authority of Belize may be exercised on behalf of Her Majesty by the Governor General, either directly or through officers subordinate to him or her. There shall be a Prime Minister of Belize who shall be appointed by the Governor General. It doesn't say there shall be a Prime Minister of Belize who would or could or should appoint the Governor General. Why? Because it is the Governor General who has sent. And to the Prime Minister to wield or use some of the executive powers that are vested in the Governor General on behalf of the head of state. So for those who have this grand idea that the Governor General is just a rubber stamp, I would say go and read it for yourself, because I just told you, and I have been telling you for a long time now, that you're misguided, misinformed, and basically somebody else is playing a game with your head when they come to you and propagate this devious concept that the Governor General is just a figurehead. I will go back up to. Oops, I made it too big. I made it that big. I'm just trying to get to. Um, okay, here we go. Part 4 of the Constitution of Belize, which relates to the position of the Governor General. So I'll explain to you. Well, yes, I will explain to you. In addition to reading from the Constitution of Belize, which will tell you what the Constitution says in regards to the powers of the Governor General. And while I read, I will keep elaborating or commenting for contextual purposes. Why is it that the Governor General is not as they would like for it to be, that she should be just a rubber stamp and just do whatever these jackals and scarflaws want her to do, even at the point of aiding and abetting sedition? Because sedition is a high treasonous act when it is done by high officials. Sedition, when done by the average person on the street, it's a crime. And it's not just a civil crime, it goes beyond being a civil crime to the point of becoming a criminal act, and therefore punishable under criminal uh, rules and regulations. Uh, I stated what I stated just now because there's a context to it, but I need to proceed quickly with what I was reading before I made that diversion. If I have an opportunity, I'll come back later on and deal with those. That's a side issue. I'll deal with that. But I need to try and stay as focused as possible because of the reading of the Constitution as I'm trying to do, as well as the commentaries that I'm trying to do as we go along. So Part 4 of the Constitution, highlighted as title, the Governor General, under Section 30 of the Constitution of Belize, it says, there shall be a Governor General of Belize, who shall be a citizen of Belize, appointed by Her Majesty, and shall hold office during Her Majesty's pleasure. In this case, she is appointed by, or would be appointed by His Majesty, and would hold office during His Majesty's pleasure, and who shall be His Majesty's representative in Belize, as I previously alluded to or said before. Section 30 goes on to say, Section 30, subsection 1, says, during any period when the office of Governor General is vacant, or the holder of the office of Governor General is absent from Belize, or is far away, or is for any other reason unable to perform the functions of his or her office, those functions shall be performed by such a person as Her Majesty or His Majesty may appoint. That is to say, a Deputy Governor General. And that Deputy Governor General does not have all the authority vested in the Governor General proper. That is to say, the Deputy Governor General cannot go in the office of the Governor General in the absence of the Governor General and fire the Governor General or write her position out of existence, as these jackals are attempting to try and do under their PCC or People's Constitution Commission recommendations. Okay? They have 100 odd recommendations, and I think it's recommendation number 50 something, where they make this proposal where they want to eviscerate the position of the Governor General and the head of state and accrue those powers. I don't know how they want to get those powers accrued to them. If I don't know if they want to overthrow the system, wage a revolution, or they themselves just decide, you know what, we're tired of having a foreign head of state. We want to be our own foreign head of state. So therefore, we will just dismiss him. We'll go to the legislator, write in some kind of a notation there, create an act of Congress, and dismiss the head of state. Now, I'm laughing because these jackals. Okay, why I'm laughing is because it is precisely what I just said just now. As stupid as it sounds, or as crazy as it sounds, it's what these fools are attempting to do. Okay? They want to vest the powers of the Governor General and the head of state in the office of the Prime Minister for him to exercise those powers. And they're hoping, based on this recommendation that they had in this PCC recommendation, group of recommendations, they're hoping that they would go to the House and just write something and say, well, you know what? The Prime Minister is now our head of state. And since we have a head of state that is local, we don't even need a Governor General anymore anyhow. That's the preposterousness of these people's attitude and behavior. They have no respect for law, even though we live in a society of law and order. They have no regards for the Constitution. They have no ethics professionally in terms of them having been given the privilege to serve in a capacity which they agreed to do, but that they want to overthrow the whole damn system and do what they want. And worst of all, they hope to do that with no repercussions or no kickback or no, I mean, whatever they do should be accepted by everybody else, and everybody else should just roll with whatever they do. They don't want to do the decent thing, which is to have some kind of negotiation with the head of state so that the head of state can vest in them that power or give up that power to them. No, they're so onerous that they feel like they can act like a bully and just slap it out of the head of state hand. Like, a bully in the schoolyard, right? You see somebody have something in their hand that they want and they just go and knock it out their hand, and that's the end of that. Seditious activities mostly end up as treasonous conduct, with the consequence of treasonous um, uh, uh, if somebody does something that is treasonous, more likely than not, they will suffer some consequence for their treachery. But I don't want to get into that. That's another little side issue there. That I need to stay focused on getting the reading done before my time is up. I like the commentaries, and I think sometimes I overdo it, right? At least I'm sure that in the mind of some people I overdo it when I'm trying to explain away certain things, clarify certain things, because I'm not talking to just people who are lawyers in our country who should know these things that I'm talking about. This program is not for them. They should know, and they probably do know what I'm talking about. But as hired guns, they're going to go ahead and help the government hoodwink the people, lie to the people, and use the people as a front, as sovereign citizens, to declare themselves, you know, owners and controllers of the powers of the state. Because the people are the government, and the caretaker of the government, they're just hired employees on behalf of the people, but not the way these people operate. They behave as if they have a right to lord or control over the people and to do whatever they want without the public input or consent. When in fact, under the Representation of the People's Act, it is required that the government um, caretakers go to the public with a plebiscite if they want to deal with any of those issues that are the domain of the people. You have a Representation of the People's Act that tells the government that they should have a referendum when they want to deal with any of these substantive issues, especially as regards to certain constitutional matters. They just can't willy nilly decide one day they want to vanquish away our constitution on our behalf. We have never given up that power or authority or rights to them to be able to do that. They have never written in a manifesto and told us before we elected them that that's what they wanted to go and do. Otherwise, they would not have been elected. But after they get elected, they get power drunk, they get big headed, and they go on presuming that they can act and behave regardless of the fact that a constitution exists and we only have one at a time. They are currently reacting and behaving as if the constitution that they were proposing is already in place, and the existing constitution that we have now is gone, eviscerated, and or they can just ignore it and pretend that it does, they have no regards, respect for it, or fidelity to it. I need to do a little bit more reading here again. Like I said, uh, the last part that I read just now was regarding the possibility of the Governor General, of the head of state, appointing a deputy Governor General to help in the absence or the non-availability of the Governor General, whether for sickness or for whatever reason. so that that deputy governor general can help in the process. And I would tend to believe that a deputy governor general should only act on behalf of the governor general and the head of state in the case of an emergency need to act instead of waiting till the governor general becomes available. If there's an urgency that cannot wait, and that urgency cannot be to eviscerate or to override or to go behind and stab the governor general in her back in order to get rid of her. That is not a true emergency in regards to operating honestly in the context of a good governance. So the next part, which was subsection 2, reads as follows. Any such person as aforesaid, that is the person that we referred to, who would be appointed as Deputy Governor General, that person shall not continue to perform the functions of the office of Governor General if the holder of the office of Governor General or some other person having a prior right to perform the functions of that office has notified him, the Deputy Governor General, that he, the original Governor General, is about to assume or resume those functions. That was just for clarity, and it's constitutionally enshrined. That's why I read it. And then it goes on to say that the holder of the office of Governor General shall not, for the purposes of this section, be regarded as being absent from Belize or as unable to perform the functions of his office if, in the case of paragraph A and B, you know, those circumstances prevail. I will not go into reading them and explaining, even though they are short, because I have other parts that I need to read. Section 32 of the Constitution of Belize reads as follows. Now, everything that we have been reading and dealing with so far has been about the office or the position or the officers that holds those positions, such as the Governor General and the Deputy Governor General. And we alluded a little bit to the Prime Minister, who is appointed by the Governor General and not the other way around. Section 32 reads as follows. A person appointed to hold the office of Governor General shall, before entering upon the duties of that office, that person shall take and subscribe the oath of allegiance and office. There's an oath of allegiance that should be taken as having allegiance to Belize, its people, and the Constitution. And there is an oath that is to be taken as a subordinate officer of the head of state and or the Governor General acting on behalf of the head of state. That is that even the Prime Minister, if he were to be found in contravention of the rule of law and or any other criminal issue, to the point where the Governor General in his or her what they call it? It's illegal. I can't recall it right now, so let me not waste time killing time on it. I was trying to recall a term, a legal term. But it's actually based on the fact that if the Governor General, for whatever reason, has to, okay, let me give you an example. Let's say there's uh, um, some of the ministers, they decide that they don't want the prime minister to continue being prime minister for whatever reason, and there's a vote of no confidence in the prime minister, that prime minister then, within 7 days, should leave on his own, or the governor general has reserve powers to be able to dispatch him and replace him with somebody else. A lot of our people don't understand or know those mechanics. Those are, you'd call them esoteric statecraft issues. And most people, are oblivious or unaware of that. As a matter of fact, they're even oblivious about the fact that a member of the House of Representatives can be recalled by their division, or the whole government can be recalled if enough members of the House of Representatives can be recalled. We have never had those circumstances prevail before, but the law is there to facilitate such a outcome or action or outcome. Um, a person appointed to hold the office of Governor General shall, comma, before entering upon the duties of that office, comma, they shall take and subscribe the oath of allegiance and office. It goes on to say under section 33, subsection 1, whenever the Governor General has occasion to be absent from the seat of government, but not from Belize, as in paragraph A, paragraph B says as well, has occasion to be absent from Belize for a period which he considers or she considers acting in his or her own deliberate judgment, which was the two words I was looking for earlier when I said I could not recall the proper term. Because when it says about the Governor General acting in his or her own deliberate judgment, it means that the Governor General does not need any outside influence or other individuals to impress on him or her as Governor General what decision to make or what finality to have in regards to any decision made. The Constitution says that the Governor General is a superior officer to the subordinate officers in cabinet and elsewhere inside of the structure of government. The executive powers of Belize rest with the head of state, and it is conveyed to the Governor General. Not all of it, by the way, because the Governor General can't fire, just like how the Prime Minister, they can't fire the Governor General, and they insist in trying to get it done. The Governor General does not have the reserve powers of the head of state either to be able to fire the head of state. And yet these knuckleheads, scofflaws, jackals are attempting to overthrow the system and to hopefully get the Governor General to acquiesce to them, to let them fire her and fire her boss. That's how onerous these people that we're dealing with as a so-called elected, duly elected government, duly elected, we call it, caretaker of the government of Belize. They feel like they own the government because they paid a few people during the campaign for their vote, which was illegal, by the way. But like I said earlier, these people that we have running the government on our behalf as our government caretakers, they feel like they own the government, they have bought the government because they paid a few of the voters for their vote, which is also illegal, by the way. But they don't care about legality, constitutionality, lawfulness. They commit crimes under the color of law, and none of them are arrested. But they have the temerity to send the stormtroopers to go and arrest just about any other person in the society for perceived crimes that later on the court threw out and are and people get to go free after having lost so many days of their lives being in prison, waiting for the day of judgment. And these jackals can't return back nobody's freedom to them after they have dispossessed them of it. Nor do they suffer any consequence. They should be able to be prosecuted or sued by private individuals personally for personal liabilities rather than hiding behind the government. And when they are sued, it is really very same people have to provide them with legal support and pay whatever bills have to be paid when any court rule against them. I will go on to read the next portion here of the under section under subsection 2 of this same section that we are reading, section 33. So it's section 33, section 33, subsection 2 reads as follows: the power and authority of the Governor General shall not be abridged. Hello? Does anybody understand what that means as compared to the Governor General just being a rubber stamp? Subsection 2 reads: the power and authority of the Governor General shall not be abridged, altered, or in any way affected by the appointment of a deputy under this section, provided that the question whether or not a deputy has conformed to and observed any such instructions given to him or her shall not be inquired into by any court of law. Under Section 34 of the Constitution of Belize, it goes on to say, the exercise of governance, the exercise of Governor General's functions. Subsection 1 reads as follows: in the exercise of his functions, the Governor General, well, it's a his or her, because we know that we have a female who is the President Governor General. So, in the exercise of his or her functions, the Governor General shall act in accordance with the advice of the Cabinet or a minister acting under the general authority of Cabinet, except in cases where he or she, as Governor General, is required by this Constitution or any other law to act in accordance with the advice of and or after the consultation with any person or authority other than the Cabinet or in his or her own deliberate judgment. That is to say, the Governor General has the final say in determining how she would act or in her decision making, regardless of the fact that she should consult, take input from other people. At the end of the day, it is it is her own deliberate judgment that matters. So if she takes counsel from anyone that has a vested interest in providing her counsel for any issue, she does not have to act on those counseling. She can act in her own deliberate judgment. Subsection 2 of Section 34 goes as follows: any reference in this Constitution to the functions of the Governor General shall be construed as a reference to his or her powers and duties in the exercise of the executive authority of Belize, which is vested in the head of state and which she can exercise either herself directly or by subordinate officers, as we read in the previous sections. the executive authority of Belize, and to any other powers and duties conferred or imposed, went blank, or imposed on him or her as Governor General by or under the Constitution or any other law. Now you realize that the mentioning there of the Constitution or any other law, it also recall that every time I read Section 2 of the Constitution, I emphasize what the other law is implying or intimated to. That is to say, there are laws that are not one and the same as the Constitution, but there are other substantive laws that the legislator is empowered to make. But in the making of those laws, for those laws to be considered constitutional, legal, or lawful, they have to be made within the bounds of the Constitution. You cannot make a law outside the bounds of the Constitution and try to use that to trump the Constitution, because statutory instruments, which are SIs or procedures, protocols, or department rules and regulations, does not trump the Constitution. Those have to be made within the boundaries of the Constitution. Because I'm going to go to Section 2 of the Constitution and read that quickly. I'm getting close to time. I'll just proceed. Let me see. Oh, still need to go a little further. Part 1. Okay. I'll read for context, right? Part 1 of the Constitution of Belize, where it speaks about the state and the Constitution. And under that Part 1, Section 2 of the Constitution, subsection 1, reads as follows. Just a second. It's Section 2, subsection 1 reads, "This Constitution is the supreme law of Belize, and if any other law is inconsistent with this Constitution, that other law shall, comma, to the extent of its inconsistency, comma, be void." In other words, any law that is violative of the Constitution or breach the Constitution, or any law that the Parliament or the House of Representatives decides to make, and they make it outside of the bounds of the Constitution, it means then that that law, as stipulated here in the Constitution, is void. In other words, it was stillbirth from the time that they attempted to make it. The laws that the legislature are authorized to make are supposed to be constitutional. They're supposed to be within the bounds of the Constitution. They're supposed to have the authority and the powers of the Constitution to legitimize them, to make them legal and lawful. To make a law outside of the bounds of the Constitution that transgress the Constitution, that is violative of the Constitution. The Constitution just says here under Section 2, any such law that they make that contravenes the Constitution is null and void. It's still birth. It was never birthed. It never got life. It didn't breed. For it to breed, it must be made within the bounds of the Constitution. It must be lawful. We're living in a lawful society. We're not living in a dictatorship or in a fascist society, or in any society where whatever comes out of the minister's demand is the law of the day. And if those thoughts or ideas or information that comes out of their mind changes from one day to the next, then you're at the whim of something that is not constitutionally written or stabilized. You just go according to the madman ideas on any given day. That's not what a lawful, legal, and constitutional society is all about. And we claim to be a lawful and constitutional and legal society. So therefore, we need to follow the laws. If we don't like them, change them. Follow the procedures for changing the laws and change them. But you can't just disregard the Constitution and pretend that it doesn't exist and disregards the rules and the regulations that guide the well-being and proper caretaking of the public. The Constitution is not there to be a whip on the public. It is there to make sure that the enshrined rights and privileges and the governance system accrues to the well-being of the society, and not to those who are just on an agenda of hustling and who don't want to be persecuted and who wants to create laws to stop people from complaining to them about the wrongs that they're doing and criminalize people for complaining about the wrongs that the scofflaws are doing. They spend enough time making or creating laws. Just yesterday, they were in the house creating laws again. Every time they go to the house, is to create a bogus law that, you know, hurts somebody other than themselves. Or the other reason why they go to the house is to ask for additional um, funds, either from the consolidated funds or to ask for permission to enter into some agreement for some loan motion or some loans. Just about every time they go to the house is to acquire additional funds. They read our annual budget, which is never uh, properly put together in the first place. And as soon as the budget is finished read, or in fact, the time when they are reading the budget, they are also making moves and motions for loans. And all through the budget year, they keep adding up more money on top of the originally read budget to the point where another 500 million or more, you know, is usually added on by the end of the budget period. I don't know. And it seemed to me like the Belizean people are quite satisfied, or they could care less. They're quite cavalier, you know, or they feel like, well, there's nothing they can do or that they should do because these guys are elected by them. So let's let them do what they want. Very pathetic, small-minded. Um, I have another 6 minutes left. Six minutes left, and I'm going to use that 6 minutes to go back to the issue of law and order, which is something that's prevalent right now in our society. Under Section 12 of the Constitution of Belize, it speaks to the issue of protection of freedom of expression. Section 12 of the Constitution of Belize, subsection 1 reads as follows: except with his or her own consent, a person shall not be hindered. Uh, I need to make it a little smaller, just okay. Yeah. Oh man, I did. Okay. Except with his or her own consent, a person shall not be hindered in the enjoyment of his freedom of expressions, including freedoms to hold opinions without interference by any government officials, for example, and to have the freedom to receive ideas and information without interference from any government officials, and to have the freedom to communicate ideas and information without any person, without any interference. And it goes on to say, open bracket, whether that communication be to the public generally or to any person or class of persons, and the freedom from interference with his correspondence. Just recently, we had a situation where the Minister of Home Affairs is alleged to have made a complaint to his subordinates, police officers, that a gentleman had offended him in saying that he had said something recently that he had actually said long time ago. That is to say, because the young man brought up the long time ago statement that this minister made, that he wanted this young man to be charged criminally. By the way, it's a civil matter, you know. But the idiot doesn't even know the difference. And they put the man to go be police minister. You don't know the difference between a civil matter and a criminal matter. And he's going to send some of his police stormtroopers to go to this man's house, arrest the man, terrorize the man's wife and family, because he wants to abuse and use powers. I'm sorry. Because he wants to use and something is not too correct here right now. Yeah, he wants to use and abuse powers that are vested. He wants to use and abuse powers that are vested in the police department for the police to arrest people who commit crimes. Now, if you commit a criminal offense or a criminal act, you're liable to be arrested, get your bail, depending on the level of criminality of the conduct, and go home until your case is called up. Well, not go home. In some major criminal cases or criminal situations, they end up taking you to jail and keep you in remand after the judge makes an initial pronouncement and gives you a date for the full hearing to be had. And that is in a criminal matter. In a civil matter, if somebody curses at you or says something or offends you, or you feel bad about something that, or somebody, you're aggrieved at something that somebody did or said or whatever, that didn't have any injuries as a result, you're supposed to take out a court summons against that person for that person to appear in court to answer to a civil charge. No police officer is supposed to come and grab you, arrest you, lock you down in a peace house overnight or for a whole weekend over a civil matter. That is not the way our laws and beliefs is supposed to be. But yet this knucklehead police minister is going to arbitrarily and capriciously exercise powers that somehow or another he thinks he's entitled to exercise for his own personal purposes. You cannot take the powers of state to use for your personal agenda, Mr. Police Minister. You need to be fired when found to be committing any such crime. As a matter of fact, you need to be tried and jailed. You need to suffer some consequence for such criminal act. That's an abuse of power, an abuse of somebody else's freedom and their rights under the color of law, because you are making a complaint and you are demanding that your subordinate officers then follow through with your complaint and deal with it in a criminal the way they'll deal with a criminal matter. In other words, go do a favor for you. And if they don't, then they could be in trouble for not following an illegal order. Because what you did is tantamount to an illegal order to your subordinates for them to go out there and rang and strong and take away somebody's freedom from them. That's illegal, unlawful, and unconstitutional. But your government or any of the other entities, the DPP or the Attorney General or any other minister or even the Prime Minister, is aiding and abetting your illegal and bastardized conduct. Talking that, well, if he got offended, then he should have a right as a civilian. He's a Belizean too. That's the words of the Prime Minister. Because the man is a Belizean too, he's entitled to go ahead and use powers that not any other Belizean have to go and commit a crime under the color of law. What a stupid statement for the Prime Minister to make. Not everybody who is a Belizean have the powers and the authority to be the Minister of Police and to lord over the police department and to have the police high command get together and decide among themselves to go and commit a crime. Because what you're doing then is acting as a bunch of scofflaws. What you're doing then is issuing illegal orders. What you're doing then is subverting the powers of state for personal use. And the person above you who should call your attention and put you on the carpet for your illegal conduct is getting in the public and aiding and abetting with your behavior. No wonder you behave like that. As a matter of fact, you got that office because the very same Prime Minister was offering that office before he gave it to you, was offering the office to somebody else. Because the previous holder of that office stepped away or did not want to continue with all the crazy and illegal and controversial things that were happening in that department, in the police department. So Mr. Musa did not get to continue that office because he dared to speak up and said that the videotapes that showed who the culpable person was in the Budna matter should have been made public. He got his office stripped from him just for saying that. And then the job was being offered to Mr. Musa Breda, who declined the offer as well because he realized that he didn't want to get his hand into no kind of sewage situation. And therefore, they came to you and offered you that job because they knew the kind of person that you were. First of all, you're a military trained person. You have no knowledge or idea about law, legality, or the Constitution. You're not a lawyer. And even if you're not a lawyer, the basic reading of the Constitution should tell you that your conduct stinks to high heaven. Or I wouldn't even say to high heaven, to lower hell, in regards to abusing the power that is entrusted to you and powers that is not invested in you. Because you're not vested with any power to violate the Constitution or any other person's constitutional rights and their freedoms. Before that job was given to you, you should have been trained, you should have been sent to school, or up to now you could still go to school and learn how to do policing. Since you already have the position, the least you can do is learn what the job entails and do the job the right way. You didn't send no police officer to go and arrest your brother who made physical threats to the very same person that you end up arresting and put in jail. You put that man in jail, took away his freedom for a few words that hurt your feelings. And you didn't put in jail or arrest your own brother who committed a criminal act of threatening a person's life and safety and well-being. You should have hauled your brother into jail for a few nights and do the same thing that you did to somebody else that didn't com- committed such a crime. You pretend that you don't know the difference between a civil act or a civil offense and a criminal act. Because for all you know, you're coming off with the idea that whether your brother is guilty of the crime or not, he's your brother, so you don't want to have no harm or hurt uh, come to him. So then, for all intents and purposes, you're allowing him to lord above the law. You're exculpating him for the crime that he commit, while at the same time you're pretending that you are so aggrieved and so hurt. And if the person that you put in jail ever decide that he wants to contest your illegal conduct, who you think can pay for it? I'm sure that you're aware of the fact that we, the government, will have to provide you with legal support, and you're not going to be dispossessed of your job until you're found not guilty. You're still going to keep your job. And if you're found guilty, we're going to have to pay the tab. And that's the reason why you guys act so honestly, with no respect for the law, for the people, no regards for the Constitution. You act like bullies. And then you don't want to be told that you're acting like a bully. My personal wish would be that people like you who misbehave in that kind of way, who abuse the position and power and the rights of others, could be sued personally and then pay on their own lawyer and pay for their own damage, rather than sitting on the dime of the of our state, extracting from our state and doing further damage to our state. Because that kind of behavior is onerous. Nevertheless, I've come to the end of the show for tonight. I went a few minutes above our regular time. I just want to say to those of you who had the opportunity to listen to what I had to offer tonight, I hope I did not disappoint you in regards to being personal and or being too forthcoming with the issues of the day. Because this is also an issue and an affair regarding Belizeans affair, Belizeans' rights, and good governance. Thank you very much, Belizeans at home and abroad. This was Leonard Brackett, sitting in as chairman and presenter for tonight's program. I hope I've done justice to your 1.5 hour tonight, and we're looking forward to have you visit us on Monday, when we'll have the Monday night chairman coming up with another program on the Belizean Affairs show. Thank you. God bless Belize and Belizeans at home and abroad. Good night.